Hi there, welcome to 345 Tech Talks. I'm here today with my colleague Danny, and we're going to talk about chatbots. So we've been doing a few discussions on things like machine learning and AI, and today we're going to look at one of the very common uses of AI, one of the things that maybe you interact with quite often, one of the most frequent ways in which AI interacts with your life. So yeah, where do we start, Danny?
I think hello there. Obviously, to start, hello to everyone listening. Chatbots, like you say, are very prominent now and becoming ever more popular. Not only from a public domain, but also from a business side as well. So, web interaction and all those types of things, it starts to become very popular. So,
Yeah,
it'd be really interested to see how it develops going forward, but also just giving people a quick insight today as some of the good, the bad, and maybe the ugly.
yeah. So really, chat apps started where literally you'd have an app maybe on your website where people type in, and you'd literally have the equivalent of call center agents in a building that were replying. And obviously, it was quite expensive to have armies of call center agents typing stuff into little chat windows. And
Mm.
so someone got the bright idea of how can we automate this, and thus the chatbot was born. Um, so and it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you probably, I don't know the extent to which people think now. If they go on a website and a little chat thing pops up and it says, "Hi, I'm Andre," and that's my chatbot persona. Um, do you do you think now that that is a person, or do you just expect it to be a machine?
Me personally, I would obviously, I would instantly think that was a machine talking to me. I think, like you say, that the days of that personal interaction is certainly moving away,
Yeah,
and this sort of this digital interaction um, is becoming ever more popular, and a lot of that is you're probably right, like you say there, cost becomes quite a big part of that. Armies of people sat in there talking to or trying to um, have conversations, very small conversations with people online. I also think in the world that we are now, from a digital perspective, that people are actually more comfortable having those types of conversations, especially if you're of a certain generation. You're very comfortable having these conversations online. That
with
are
with,
just
with the machine.
with a machine. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So there's an interesting thing here, and kind of it comes, I'd probably said this last, but let's bring it up first. It's kind of there's kind of both an ethical and perhaps a practical side to it. To say, um, should you know that it's a machine you're talking to? I mean, is it misleading to say? Well, firstly, is it misleading or unethical to pretend to be a person when you're a machine? Would it be more
Mm.
straightforward to just be upfront and say, "Hi, I'm Igor the chatbot. Uh,
Mm.
I will try my best to answer your questions." First of all, is that is there? Do you feel like there's anything ethical about that?
Um, I don't feel there's anything unethical if you don't say it. If I'm being honest, I just think it is definitely the way of the world at this present moment in time. Um, I agree with some aspect of that in terms of being upfront and honest, depending on what it is that you're selling, or what it is your business does. Um, I also think that there's some real popularity with it as well, and just thinking outside of the box with certain brands and things online that they're actually coming to the forefront with this type of technology. And I think people are actually starting to enjoy that and actually started to really adapt and accept it. So I think there's definitely probably a couple of schools of thought based around, and I keep saying things like based around the generation that you're in.
Yeah.
I think that definitely makes it a big difference. But I also think that there's a lot of people um, certainly in the UK that are certainly comfortable and happy now that this is the way that we're going from a digital age.
Okay. So, and kind of there's another aspect to that, and we'll probably say why this is in a little while, but um, if you know you're talking to a machine, you'll probably you well talking with your fingers. If you're typing messages into a machine, you'll probably be simpler in your language
Mm.
because you won't expect the machine to understand colloquialisms. You probably won't expect the machine to understand slang, to understand obscure words, to understand very flowery descriptive sentences or anything like that. So you'll probably type in a much simpler sentence, and that's the flip side of it, is that you probably get a better result by being simpler in your input.
Yes, totally agree. Yeah,
Because I suppose this comes on to sort of, some of the things that make chatbots work, and this is where the kind of the AI comes in,
yeah,
because you type something in, you could type any old sentence in, and the chatbot has to try and understand that. And the thing that underpins it is something called NLP, which everyone thinks is neural linguistic programming because that's what it means in the wider world. But in the AI world, NLP is natural language processing,
yeah,
and and so you've got to actually, and that's the processing that's taking a bunch of words and actually trying to find what they actually mean underneath it. And yeah, there's tools like Microsoft have one called Lewis. There are ones that Google have one, Amazon has obviously Alexa, um, and I think Google's one's called Eric or something like that. Don't hold me on that. But basically there's technologies from all the big tech companies that analyze language and try to come up with it so that when you put something into your chatbot, it kind of decodes that.
yeah,
And the main thing it's trying to look for is intent. So you're trying to sort of, because it's trying to say what is it this person wants?
yeah. What are they trying to say or
What are
trying
they
to
trying
ask?
to
Yeah,
what are they trying to say? And what's the I mean I was at a and the other thing is that there's intent, but there's also entity or entities, which are the things. So if I say I, then that's obviously me. But so if I would like to buy a pair of trainers,
hmm,
right? So if you break that down, the intent is obviously placing an order or
yeah,
buy, you know,
hmm,
whatever. That's the however you say it, your intent category is placing an order. One entity is me, I, and the other one is pair of trainers. So okay, so the chatbot then can sort of say, this person wants to place an order. So you then so where'd you go then? Well, what they're going to buy a pair of trainers, but that's a bit too vague. But what you might say is pair of trainers might be product category. So you then have to say, what sort of trainers would Well, then you've got to put all the search terms around train. What size?
yeah,
What brand? What style? Is it running shoes? Is it cross trainers? Is it whatever? But there's that kind of thing of breaking a sentence down into the intent and what the things are, the categories or the entities. I was at a talk last year on with a guy that was really really good with this stuff. He works in a chatbot company, and he's it was fascinating stuff because he just gave like loads of examples of so you could type in what's the weather today, but then but then think of how many other ways you can ask what the weather's going to be like.
yeah,
Is it going to be hot? Do I
yeah,
need to take an umbrella? Shall I pack my raincoat?
yeah.
Do I need wellies? Um, you know,
Temperature. Yeah, yeah,
should I bring sun cream? What's the temperature? It's just like kind of things that if you were talking to a person and you said, "Do I need to bring my umbrella today?" they'd know exactly what you meant. If you talk
mm,
to a chatbot and you say, "Do I need to bring my umbrella?" then like, really? It's just so that's why it comes back to this whole thing of kind of simplicity. That the simpler you are with it, then the more chance if you knew you were talking to a machine, you wouldn't say you wouldn't say something like that. You wouldn't say, "Shall I bring my wellies? Shall I pack an umbrella?" You probably wouldn't say that. Oh, hey, who got a visitor? That's Bella, by the way, everyone.
Bella the beagle.
Bella the beagle.
I've got quite.
Always a fun animal, the
Yeah.
beagle. You always know. The thing with beagles is you always know you're in for fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Abs-
but
Absolutely.
so yeah, so that's why. Um, so that's why it's sort of really important. I think that sometimes you know that you're talking to a machine because you've got more chance of success if you just say, "What will the weather be today?"
Yeah.
rather than something obscure.
You notice that as well with let's talk around things like Alexa. When people
Yeah,
ask a question to Alexa, because they are fully aware of what Alexa is, um, the question becomes a lot clearer. Um, like you say, they are fully aware of how, or you know, there's no slang term when you're asking Alexa a question. It's very black and white, like you say, to make it a lot easier for the response to come back.
especially if you've got because I've got one of those voices that AI seems impossible to finds it impossible to understand. That it just seems to you know please navigate to Tunbridge Wells. I'm taking you to Tewkesbury, and it's
Yeah.
like what? How on earth did it say? How on earth did it
And this is actually going to lead on to my next question around training. And obviously we talk about um, AI, and we also look at like the machine learning and the learning aspect of teaching that bot certain things for it to continue to learn.
Yeah.
For example, accents is one, and slang terms are another. I was going to ask you a little bit around that and
Yeah,
how.
because at least with chatbots, you have at least got text to work from.
Yes.
So I mean that whole thing of speech, because the way that things like Alexa usually work is they work on firstly they usually do speech to text, and then they do the NLP on the text, and then you've got the intent behind that.
Yeah.
So at least you've taken that layer out of the speech to text, and you've just got your chatbot's just got the text. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, if you're anything like me, you've got a million typos in every sentence you type, so that doesn't always make it
Yeah.
easier either. But yeah, but they as we've said before on and it comes up time and time again with AI that um, sometimes just training some AI is the easy bit. The hard part is getting the right data set,
Yes.
getting the
Yeah.
right training data set, because you've got to basically give, if you're training a chatbot, you have to give that chatbot examples of input, and you then need to tell it what it means.
Hmm.
So, and so that's why, most languages, particularly English as a language, just seems to have, you can have 1,000 different ways of saying the same thing. Some other languages tend to be relatively simpler and relatively more straightforward, but in English, you've kind of got, you know, you've not only got 1,000 ways of saying the same thing, but each word means five things, and two of them are usually rude as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah. It's
I've got a problem
exactly.
with, hey Alexa, I've got a problem with my pipes. What does yeah, you're not going to expect it to like know the right context for that. All right, I'll call a plumber.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, but it is down to the So that whole thing of training data, because AI cannot go beyond its training data very easily. So some AI can, some type of models can extrapolate. If you've got particularly statistical models can extrapolate, but language-based models are really kind of stuck in terms of what data you give them.
Yeah.
Um, but the other problem is that the other thing is that um, is bias in data. So let's say you've got and this is one of the real problems. So let's say you're the Nike store and you've got your Nike chatbot, and 90% of people want to buy trainers, um, but only like a tiny fraction of people want to buy you know
Sports bras.
sports bras. Well, if my household's anything to go by, I think there's as many, I think my wife's got more sports bras and trainers, but 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 this thing. So let's say you've got most customers want X, and
Yeah.
then you've got this long tail of all these other weird wonderful things. The thing is that if you actually just take those inputs, if you take your normal day's workload
Mm.
and use that as trading data, what you'll find is that you'll get so much bias because everyone said 90% of people have said trainers. So you'll say, I want to buy a sports bra. Obviously, I don't need to buy a sports bra. Um, I want to buy some socks. Hmm. What size trainers would you like? Because
Yeah.
so
Mm.
you get that whole thing of if you over so what you need to do is almost to understand what all your separate categories are, and almost have some training data for each category, and then those categories will balance. So even if 90% of things go into one category, you still need to actually give enough examples of all the other categories, um, in order for that in order to eliminate that bias. And I think that's one of the big that's one of the big things with training data, particularly when you've got when you've got massive you know when your normal day-to-day stuff is skewed in one direction.
Mm.
you know, if you're if you're if you're if you've got your bank's chatbot, 90% of them might be balance inquiry, and then only like 0.1% will be, can I order a checkbook?
Yeah.
Uh, so that's the thing. Is just that kind of training data is a really 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 important thing.
Moving from that, just very quickly, just based on that, on what you've said there about the training data, do you think that there is a slower shift to this type of product? So in terms of chatbot, and do you think that there is going to be a slower shift because of the way that a lot of big brands now, bigger brands, have a variety of products, and a variety of, of different types of products in and around their stores, either online or obviously, or mostly online. But do you think that that's going to slow that shift down because of the way that we're going to have to train? Because it has to be right, doesn't it? You can't implement something like this into a big brand like you mentioned there, like Nike, and it not be right straight away, because it's going to be vitally important, for it to be correct, and for there not to be any, like you say there, buy a pair of socks and it pops up with what size
yeah.
trainer. So you're going to have to put a lot of data and a lot of training into making sure that everything is as good as it can be, um, from the outset, rather than
Yeah.
just saying put it in there and then hoping that we train the data behind the scenes, whilst we've still got this fascia of a chatbot, hopefully taking orders for us to some extent.
So that actually is a great segue into some of the other applications for chatbots, because we've kind of talked about the kind of we've kind of given the example of it's you've got this chatbot on your website serving your customers, and obviously, managing the customer experience is a really important part of a company's you know a
It's
company's sort
huge.
of
Yeah.
and getting that wrong has a huge impact. So but what you also find is that chatbots can do a whole load of other things as well. So for example, let's imagine you've got a really big company that's got like 10,000 people working in it. There's actually all the internal processes, like I want to book holiday, I want to raise a a fault with there's a fault with my phone. I've got I want to raise an IT support ticket. I want
Hmm.
to you know buy I want to get a new company polo shirt, or whatever it is. There's all these internal processes that are there's all these internal processes that are and in particularly the bigger companies are, obviously the more they need to formalize those processes, because they run a lot of the time. Smaller companies tend to just have someone that's they tend to be less rigid in their processes because it just isn't worth the investment in setting up formal processes. But big companies are often using a lot of chatbots now for their internal stuff. So all that stuff, holiday requests, that sort of thing. But there's also a growing move to use chatbots for more kind of rigid processes where almost because we're also used to we're also used to almost like you asking the chatbot a question and the chatbot having to find an answer and give you the answer. But actually, a lot of chatbot apps are the other way around. So things like an application form is an example where the chatbot actually asks you the questions and you put in the answers and it takes it away. So, what's your name? What's your address? Date of birth? All that sort of thing. A chatbot can actually, if you know that, let's say you're applying for a bank account and the chatbot knows that they've clicked on the apply for a bank account thing. It can follow a whole script and validate the output and all that sort of stuff by so they can automate those sort of processes as well, and it means that you can maybe interact in a way that's a bit more natural than because some people just hate filling out forms, whereas if you just get asked a series of questions
Yeah.
and then all that stuff, which is if you answered yes to this, then skip section 5 and go to 8b and all that sort of stuff. Well, you don't have to worry about all that because the logic behind the chatbot can do that for you. You can just say, "Oh, you're a UK national and you were born here, therefore we don't have to say what previous countries you've lived in or whatever." Um, so there's a lot of those applications as well. So again, I think that there are. It's an interesting one about the customer experience because the bigger companies have probably got the more resources to put into this sort of thing, and maybe have more savings to make from managing the customer experience. But at the same time, if they get it wrong, there's a bigger there's a bigger potential downside.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I
Yeah.
think the other thing is that I think a lot of chatbots are also almost doing the first layer of stuff. So they're just asking how can I help you today?
Hmm.
And then as soon as and sometimes as soon as they get stuck, that's when they forward you onto a real person.
Hmm.
But if how can I help you today? I'd like to check my balance. Hey, I can do that. And so so they can handle all the simple run of the mill stuff, and then all the stuff that needs that actually falls outside that training data. You can always forward it on to an agent. Oh, I'm just going to get my colleague Brendan to take over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and again this also comes back to the managing the experience, because if you know you're managing if you know you're talking to a machine and the machine says I'm a bit stuck, I'm going to get a human involved, then you probably wouldn't have a problem with that. Whereas if you thought you were talking to a person and then they said, actually I'm stuck, I'm, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Davina. I'm taking over.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bit of a jarring customer experience. A bit weird. So
Yeah, it's sort of a bit half and half, and you've almost got to start the whole conversation again. This leads me quite nicely, actually, onto another question, and it's the question is why, and why you believe that um, you know a business should consider having this type of product or a chatbot built into their services as an online service. Could you give us an idea as to, we've already spoke around the cost saving element of it,
mm.
and could you give us a little bit of an idea as to why you think actually this could really work? And we already know that, we certainly know it could work for a lot of industries.
So that I mean, again, that is a great question, and there are probably a few different avenues we can go down on that. So one of them is that some people, particularly if people are a bit more introverted, just hate phoning.
Yeah,
I know people that just hate
yeah,
phoning, but they have no reservation whatsoever about going on the chatbot. And almost, and some people that are really, really introverted, and we work in tech, we know a lot of these people. But some people that are really, really introverted, they they would almost prefer to know that it's a robot, not a robot, a bot. They'd almost prefer to know that it's a machine
yeah,
because because they're so kind of that's the way they are. So that's one reason why people might want to do it. Another reason is, and again, this is kind of why you want to might engage with chat rather than necessarily, not necessarily whether it's whether regardless of whether it's a human behind it or a bot, but um, and it's similar to why we use things like Alexa is that people find that a bit more of a natural way of interacting.
Mm.
So the reason you have Alexa is that it's more natural to just say, hey Alexa, you I was going to say, "Hey Alexa, play Planet Rock," which is what which is what they always advertise on the radio. Um, but yeah, but it's that whole thing of just a more conversational type of interaction
Yeah.
is more natural than um, you know because we used to be in most kind of even things like online shopping, that sort of thing. If you think of it, you buy some stuff, put in your basket, and then you go down a very very rigid process of filling in forms, and then you press next, and it's like, oh, there's a validation error, and it's like,
Mm.
oh, and then you got to scroll back up and see which one's got the red star on it, and it's like, and we're kind of conditioned. We became conditioned to that because computers weren't flexible enough, so we had to adapt to how the computer wanted to interact with us.
Mm.
But what's happening now, the reason why AI is such, a massive thing in consumer tech, is that AI allows computers to adapt to us rather than us adapting to computers. And that's sort of and that's the kind of watershed moment, really. It's just,
Yeah. Love that.
just,
Yeah.
just and okay, it's not perfect, it's not there, but chat is a relatively simple way of saying, okay, the computer's going to interact. No, I'm going to talk to it how I want to talk to it, and then and the computer's going to react to that,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
feels a bit more natural
Yeah.
in terms of how we want to do that.
It's extremely progressive as well. I think when people go on to, I know when I go on to any type of site, we mentioned there sports brands, it you can see that it's progressive, and I think people like to see that. If you go on to some sites and you see sort of old technologies, certainly us within our industry, I like to see new technologies. I like to play around with the new technologies and see how they work. And it shows, or for me, it shows that that's a progressive brand, that's moving with time. And I think that also resonates with what you were saying around going online now and purchasing something. That's almost very entry level in terms of our ability to work online.
Yeah,
It's a base level now. It's the old going to the shop is literally, opening up the laptop and doing some form of online shopping, and that's a very entry level basic way. And if you can go onto a brand and a site and you've got this opportunity to almost have a discussion with a chatbot, and that leads you to the product that you ultimately want to buy, then I see that as a really great progression in technology.
yeah, and and so it's then, it's and for businesses, it's an opportunity then, isn't it? It's an opportunity to, because ultimately, particularly for retailers, if someone walks into their virtual shop, the faster they can get that person connected with the product that is exactly the one that's right for them, that's got to be best for their business.
Yeah.
Similarly, even if for some like a utility company or a bank or something like that, the sooner you can go on and the most painlessly you can have your inquiry dealt with, the faster and easier you can have your inquiry dealt with. That's competitive advantage. And then, of course, thirdly, we've got this whole thing of like, that we mentioned about cost saving. How can we, use this sort of thing to take some of the cost out. Um, it's so all those things add together, and it's all, there's, depending on what sort of business you've got, there are opportunities maybe to apply bots, um, and it's only going to become bigger, I think.
Mm. So also, yeah, I think it's definitely a huge growth area, with a lot of industry, retail obviously being one we spoke about in depth today, and banking and finance is obviously another one as well. Manufacturing, I think, is certainly going that route. So yeah, it's
Yeah, appointment at your dentist. I mean, it's just, everything that's all those things where, almost all those things where you'd have to phone up and I mean, my dentist, I tear my hair out because every time I want to phone up, they say, "We're on lunch. Can you phone
Mm,
back at 2?" And it's like,
yeah.
well, no, because I'm phoning you because I'm on my lunch. I'm having my lunch, so I'm not working, so I can now phone you.
Mm,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
whereas, so,
If you've got that ability to, yeah.
and the other thing is, so just going on to this, so we've got the ability to, to enhance the customer experience, save, save time, but also, and that's another one, is it's bots can run 24/7.
Mm,
So, if you can make a bot serve your customers' needs, then that can serve those customers' needs at any time of day or night, whenever is best for the customer, not when, not when you might have all your people in the office. So that's also a really important thing. So so Danny, I think we've kind of rabbited on long enough, but that's been a really great really great discussion around sort of the AI of chatbots and the opportunities for businesses. Is there anything else that you kind of want to say before we sign off?
No, I think that's been a really good chat actually. And like you said there, this is just one part of AI with the chatbots, and I know that we could probably talk about this for another hour in other areas with AI and data learning and things, and making sure that data's being in with machine learning and stuff. So, yeah, tune into our future podcast because we're going to move this conversation on when it comes to AI because I think there's so much that we can talk about.
Yeah, so that's it. So do listen, do keep listening in because yeah, like I say, we're going to start talking about much more of the, we're going to talk less about how AI works because that kind of blows everyone's hair back. And we're going to talk about more about how it's used and what differences it makes to your life. So we look forward to seeing you soon. So from me, Andrew, and from Danny here, we'll catch you soon. Okay, bye now.
Bye
Bye.
bye.